The ship was quiet as it moved through the darkness of space. Director Tae-ho Kim stood near the window and watched the stars pass by like small pieces of light scattered across black cloth. He had dreamed of this moment his entire life. Humanity was finally going to meet the galaxy. Behind him, Commander Yuna Park checked her uniform for the 10th time. She was a soldier, not a diplomat, but today she would smile and shake hands with creatures she had only seen in photographs. Dr. Minho Baek sat in the corner, reading through his translation notes. He had spent 20 years learning alien languages, and now he would finally use them. The year was 2247. Humans had discovered faster than light travel just 15 years ago. Since then, they had found signals from other civilizations. They had learned that they were not alone, and now, they had been invited to the Galactic Assembly's great station to ask for membership. The station appeared ahead of them. It was enormous, bigger than any city on Earth. It floated near a dying red star, and its surface glowed with millions of lights. Ships of every shape and size moved around it like insects around a lamp. "This is it," Tae-ho said softly. "Everything we worked for." Yuna moved to stand beside him. "Let's hope they like us." Minho closed his notebook. "They will see what we have to offer. We have much to share." The ship docked, and the 3 humans stepped into the station. The air smelled strange, like metal and flowers mixed together. Creatures of all kinds walked past them. Some had wings, some had tentacles, some floated in special suits filled with liquid or gas. Every single one of them stopped to stare at the humans. Tae-ho kept his head high and walked forward. For 3 months, humanity presented itself to the Galactic Assembly. They showed videos of Earth cities, its forests, its oceans. They played music from every culture. They shared scientific discoveries and medical breakthroughs. They talked about their dreams for the future. The assembly members listened. Some seemed interested, others seemed bored. A few looked at the humans with something that might have been fear. The assembly was ruled by the High Tribunal, a group of 5 representatives from the oldest and most powerful species. There was Nivan, who looked like a cloud of silver gas contained in a special suit. There was a tall creature with stone-like skin called Orin. There was a being made of crystal who never spoke but communicated through light. There was an insect-like creature with many eyes, and there was a giant, almost 3 meters tall, with blue skin and 4 arms. These 5 would decide humanity's fate. On the final day, Tae-ho stood before the tribunal in a great hall filled with thousands of beings from across the galaxy. His heart beat fast, but his voice was steady. "We come in peace," he said. "We come with hope. We ask only for the chance to join this great family of civilizations." The hall fell silent. Nivan floated forward, his gaseous form swirling slowly. "We have studied your species carefully," Nevin said. His voice was like wind through dead leaves. "We have examined your history. We have watched your behavior." Tae-ho nodded. "And what have you found?" "Blood," Nivan replied. "We found blood. Your species has existed for only a short time, and yet you have killed millions of your own kind. You have fought wars over land, over ideas, over resources. You created weapons that could destroy your entire planet, and you nearly used them." Yuna's jaw tightened. Minho looked at the floor. "You poisoned your own world," Nivan continued. "You drove countless species to extinction. You treated your planet like something to be used and thrown away. Even now, there are conflicts among your people. Violence lives in your hearts." Tae-ho stepped forward. "That is true. We have made terrible mistakes, but we have also learned from them. We have grown. We have changed." "Have you?" Nevin asked. "The assembly has existed for 12,000 years. In that time, we have built peace across the galaxy. We did this by being careful, by keeping dangerous species away until they proved themselves." The crystal being flashed with red light. The insect creature clicked its mandibles. "The High Tribunal has made its decision," Nivan announced. "Humanity is denied membership in the Galactic Assembly." The words hit Tae-ho like a physical blow. He heard Yuna gasp behind him. "Furthermore," Nevin continued, "Earth and all human colonies are hereby designated as Quarantine Zone 7. No assembly species may trade with humans, communicate with humans, or visit human space. This quarantine will remain in place until the tribunal decides otherwise. You cannot do this, Tejo said. His voice shook. You cannot judge us by our past alone. We can, Nevin replied. And we have. Your species is too dangerous, too unpredictable. Perhaps in 1,000 years, you will be ready. Perhaps not. Until then, you are excluded. The hall began to empty. Thousands of beings walked away, none of them meeting the human's eyes. Within minutes, Tejo, Yuna, and Minho stood alone in the great chamber. What do we do now? Yuna asked. Her voice was hollow. Minho shook his head slowly. We go home. We tell them what happened. Tejo stared at the empty seats where the tribunal had sat. His dream had turned to ash in his hands. Humanity had reached for the stars, and the stars had pushed them away. The journey back to Earth was the longest of Tejo's life. He barely slept. He barely ate. He kept thinking about Nevin's words. Blood. Violence. Dangerous. Were they right? Was humanity truly so terrible that they deserved to be locked away? When the ship finally entered Earth's orbit, Tejo looked down at the blue and green planet below. He saw the lights of cities, the swirls of clouds, the vast oceans that covered most of the surface. He thought about all the people down there. The doctors who healed the sick, the teachers who educated children, the artists who created beauty, the ordinary people who loved their families and hoped for better days. The assembly had seen only humanity's worst moments. They had not seen the rest. Tejo made a decision then, standing at that window. He did not know how, and he did not know when, but he would find a way to change the galaxy's mind. He would show them who humanity really was. But first, he had to go home and deliver the worst news in human history. The ship descended through the clouds, and Earth welcomed its children back with open arms. Above them, the stars continued to shine, cold and distant and full of beings who had decided that humans were not welcome among them. The rejection was complete. The isolation had begun. But somewhere deep in Tejo's heart, a small fire continued to burn. It was the fire of hope, and it would not go out. 5 years passed. 5 long, silent years. The galaxy had turned its back on humanity, and humanity had learned to live with the silence. Trade ships that once promised wealth and partnership now avoided Earth's space like it was poisoned. Communication channels that once carried alien voices went dead. The stars that had seemed so full of possibility now felt empty and cold. Hana Choi remembered the day the news came. She had been 23 years old, working as a junior communications officer at the Seoul Space Center. She had watched director Tae-ho Kim stand before the cameras and tell the world that humanity had been rejected. She had seen the shock on people's faces turn to anger, then to sadness, and finally, to a kind of quiet acceptance. Now she was 28, and the world had changed. Some people had given up on the stars entirely. They said humanity should focus on Earth, on solving its own problems. Why reach for neighbors who did not want them? Others had grown angry. A movement called the Iron Dawn had formed, led by a former military commander named Jisoo Han. Jisoo was a tall woman with cold eyes and a voice like steel. She believed that humanity should build a war fleet, break through the quarantine, and take by force what the assembly had denied them. They fear us because we are strong, Jisoo said in her broadcasts. Let us show them how strong we really are. Her words found many listeners. The Iron Dawn grew larger every year, but Hana did not believe in war. She had spent 5 years studying the Assembly's communication systems, learning how information moved through the galaxy. She understood something that most people did not. The galaxy did not hate humanity. The galaxy did not even know humanity. Think about it, she told her colleague Sunwoo Ryu one evening in their small office. Sunwoo was a systems engineer, a quiet man with clever hands and a patient mind. The Assembly has 47 species. Trillions of beings. How many of them actually met us? Sunwoo looked up from his work. A few thousand? Maybe less. Exactly. Hana pulled up a display showing the Assembly's information networks. Everyone else only knows what the tribunal told them. They received one official report saying that humans are dangerous, violent, and unpredictable. That's all they have. So they made a decision based on incomplete information, Sunwoo said slowly. Worse than that. They made a decision based on someone else's fear. Hana leaned forward, her eyes bright. The tribunal was afraid of us. So they told everyone else to be afraid too. But what if we could tell our own story? Sunwoo frowned. The quarantine prevents all communication. We cannot send messages to assembly space. Through normal channels, no, Hana smiled. But I have been studying their broadcast systems for 5 years. I know their frequencies. I know their weak points. And I think I know how to reach them directly. The plan was dangerous. It was possibly illegal, though it was hard to break laws made by a government that did not recognize your existence. But it was also the first real hope Hana had felt in years. She needed support. She needed resources. And most importantly, she needed permission. Secretary General Do-hyun Lee was 81 years old. He had white hair, a gentle face, and eyes that had seen more history than most people could imagine. He had been a young diplomat during the climate wars. He had helped negotiate the peace that united Earth's nations. He had believed in humanity's potential when others had given up. Now he sat behind his desk and listened as Hana explained her plan. You want to build a transmission array powerful enough to break through the assembly's communication barriers, he said when she finished. Yes, sir. And you want to broadcast a message to every inhabited world in the galaxy? Yes, sir. What kind of message? Hana took a deep breath. The truth. We show them who we really are. Not the monsters from the tribunal's report, but real people. Our history, our culture, our dreams. We hide nothing, not even our mistakes. And at the end, we invite them to come see for themselves. Do-hyun was quiet for a long moment. Outside his window, the sun was setting over the city. Orange light painted the buildings gold. The tribunal will call this an act of war, he said finally. They already treat us as enemies. We have nothing to lose. We could lose everything. They could send ships. They could destroy us. They could. Hana met his eyes. But they probably won't. Their whole system is built on control, on keeping species separate and afraid. If they attack us for sending a message of peace, they prove that they are the violent ones, not us. Do-hyun smiled slightly. You have thought about this carefully. For 5 years, sir. The old man stood and walked to the window. He looked out at the city, at the people going about their lives, at the children playing in the park below. I have spent my entire life believing in diplomacy, he said softly. I have always believed that talking is better than fighting, that understanding is better than fear. He turned back to face her. Build your array, Hana Choi. Send your message. Let us see if the galaxy is willing to listen. Hana felt tears form in her eyes. Thank you, sir. I won't let you down. The work began immediately. Sunwoo assembled a team of the best engineers on Earth. They designed satellites that could transmit signals powerful enough to reach across the galaxy. They built them in secret, hiding the project from the Iron Dawn and from anyone who might try to stop them. Tae-ho Kim, the man who had first spoken to the assembly, joined the project. His hair had gone gray, and his face carried new lines, but his eyes still held that stubborn fire. He helped coordinate resources and protected the team from political interference. Yuna Park, now a senior commander, provided military support. She stationed ships around the construction sites to keep them safe. Minho Baek worked on the message itself. He translated it into every major language in the galaxy. He made sure that every word would be understood. For 2 years, they worked in silence. They faced setbacks and failures. Some team members quit in frustration. Others were recruited by the Iron Dawn and had to be replaced. But slowly, the array took shape. Dozens of satellites positioned at the edge of human space, pointed toward the stars, ready to speak. On the night before the broadcast, Hana stood alone in the control room. She looked at the monitors, showing the satellites in position, waiting for her command. Tomorrow, everything would change. Either the galaxy would hear them, or it would crush them. She thought about all the beings out there who had never met a human. Scientists and artists, children and parents, beings who laughed and cried and dreamed. Just like people on Earth, they had been told to fear humanity. But fear could be overcome. We're not monsters, she whispered to the empty room. And tomorrow, we're going to prove it. Outside, the stars continued to shine. They had no idea what was coming. The 15th of March, 2254. The day the galaxy heard humanity's voice, Hana stood in the control center, surrounded by screens and machines. Sun Wu sat at the main console, his fingers ready on the keyboard. Around them, dozens of technicians monitored every system, checking and rechecking the equipment. Secretary General Do Hyun Lee had come in person. He stood near the back, his hands clasped behind him, his face calm but his eyes sharp. Director Tae-ho Kim was beside him, along with Commander Yuna Park and Dr. Min-ho Baek. The satellites were in position. The message was ready. All they needed was the order. Final checks complete, Sun Wu announced. All systems are working. We can transmit whenever you give the word. Hana looked at Do-hyun. The old man nodded slowly. Do it, he said. Sun Wu pressed the button. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. The screens showed data streaming outward, but there was no sound, no flash of light, nothing dramatic, just numbers on a display. But somewhere out there, billions of signals were racing through space at impossible speeds. They would reach the nearest alien worlds in hours. The farthest would take days. By the end of the week, every inhabited planet in the known galaxy would receive humanity's message. And what a message it was. It began with Earth. Images of the planet from space, blue and beautiful, wrapped in white clouds. Then the view moved closer, showing mountains and rivers, forests and deserts, cities and villages. A voice spoke over the images. It was Minho's voice, translated into dozens of alien languages. This is Earth, he said. This is our home. We are humanity, and we have something to tell you. The message did not hide anything. It showed human history in all its darkness and light. It showed the wars, the battles that killed millions, the bombs that destroyed cities, the cruelty that humans had shown to each other throughout their existence. The assembly had called humanity violent, and the message admitted that this was true. Yes, humans had fought. Yes, humans had killed. Yes, humans had nearly destroyed themselves many times. But the message did not stop there. It showed what came after the destruction. It showed humans rebuilding cities from rubble. It showed former enemies shaking hands and becoming friends. It showed the moment when nations that had fought for centuries finally chose peace. It showed humans protecting each other, firefighters running into burning buildings to save strangers, doctors working through the night to heal the sick, ordinary people giving food and shelter to those who had nothing. It showed a man named Taisun Kang. He was a firefighter on a border station, one of the small human outposts that existed at the edge of their space. 1 year ago, before the quarantine was fully enforced, an alien merchant ship had an accident near the station. The ship's reactor was failing. Everyone said it was too dangerous to help. Taisun went anyway. He found an alien child trapped in the wreckage, a small creature from a species that had been taught to fear humans. The child was terrified, crying for help in a language Taisun did not understand, but he understood fear. He understood pain. He picked up the child and carried it to safety, risking his own life for a being he had never met. The video showed the moment clearly. A human in a damaged spacesuit, holding an alien child in his arms, walking through fire and smoke. It was not staged. It was not created for the broadcast. It was simply what happened. The message showed an old woman named Unji No. She was 112 years old, one of the oldest humans alive. Every week, she traveled to a refugee camp near her home and read stories to children. She had been doing this for 60 years. When asked why, she simply said, "Because stories give us hope. And everyone deserves hope." The video showed her sitting in a circle of children, her wrinkled face soft with kindness, her voice gentle as she told tales of heroes and adventures. The children listened with wide eyes, their troubles forgotten for a moment. The message showed human art, paintings that captured beauty and pain in ways that words could not express, music that made people laugh and cry, stories that explored what it meant to be alive, to love, to lose, to keep going despite everything. It showed scientists working together to cure diseases, engineers building machines to clean polluted rivers, teachers dedicating their lives to helping young minds grow. It showed humanity at its best and its worst, hiding nothing, explaining everything. And at the end, Secretary General Do-Hyun Lee appeared on screen. He was not in a fancy office or a grand hall. He was sitting in a simple room, with a window behind him showing Earth's blue sky. He looked old and tired, but his voice was strong. "We are humanity," he said. "We are not perfect. We have made terrible mistakes. We have caused great suffering to ourselves and to our world." The assembly was not wrong to be cautious. He paused, looking directly at the camera. "But we are more than our mistakes. We are a species that falls down and gets back up. We hurt each other, and then we learn to heal. We fight, and then we learn to make peace. Every generation, we try to be better than the one before. Sometimes we fail, but we never stop trying." His eyes seemed to look through the screen, across the vast distances of space, directly at every being who would watch this message. "We do not ask the assembly for membership. We do not ask for forgiveness. We only ask for one thing. Come and see. Visit our worlds. Meet our people. Talk to us. Eat with us. Learn with us. See who we really are. Not the monsters from a report, but living, breathing beings who want the same things you want. Love, peace, a better future for our children." He leaned forward slightly. "Our borders are open. Any being from any world who wishes to visit Earth will be welcomed as a friend. You will be given food, shelter, and protection. We will hide nothing from you, and when you leave, you can tell others what you found." The coordinates of Earth appeared on screen. "We are here," Do-Hyun said. "We are waiting, and we hope that some of you will be brave enough to come." The message ended. In the control center, no one moved. No one spoke. The weight of what they had done hung in the air like smoke. Hana felt tears running down her face. She had worked on this message for 2 years. She knew every word, every image, but seeing it complete, knowing that it was now spreading across the galaxy, was overwhelming. Taeho put a hand on her shoulder. "You did it," he said quietly. "You gave us a voice. Now we wait," Yuna added. "And see if anyone is listening." The waiting was the hardest part. Hours passed. Then days. Reports came in that the message had been detected by assembly monitoring systems. There was confusion. Then anger. The High Tribunal declared the broadcast an act of information warfare and demanded that all species ignore it. But you cannot unhear a message. You cannot unsee images that have already burned into your memory. Across the galaxy, beings were watching humanity's story for the first time. They were seeing a species they had been told to fear. And they were finding something unexpected. They were finding hope. The galaxy had been silent for 5 years. Now, finally, there was a chance it might speak again. The first ship arrived 3 months after the broadcast. It was small, barely larger than a human shuttle. And it appeared at the edge of Earth space without warning. Defense stations tracked it immediately. And Commander Yuna Park was called to assess the situation. "It's not a military vessel," the sensor officer reported. "No weapons detected. Just one life sign aboard." Yuna stared at the screen. After 5 years of silence, after months of waiting, something had finally come. "Open a communication channel," she ordered. The face that appeared on the view screen was strange and beautiful. It belonged to a Vrel, one of the insectoid species that sat on the High Tribunal. The being had large, multifaceted eyes that shimmered with colors, delicate antennae that moved as she spoke, and a voice that clicked and hummed in patterns that the translation software converted to words. "I am Kiri," she said. "I saw your message. I want to see if it was true." Yuna took a deep breath. "Then you are welcome here. Follow our escort ships. They will bring you to Earth safely." Kiri had been a journalist on her homeworld. She had worked for the official Vrel Information Network, reporting stories that the government approved. But when humanity's broadcast appeared, everything changed. The tribunal ordered all copies of the message destroyed. They told their people that it was propaganda, lies designed to trick innocent species. They arrested anyone who spoke about it positively. Kiri could not accept this. She had watched the message 17 times, studying every moment. She had seen the firefighter carrying the alien child. She had seen the old woman reading to children. She had seen the art and the music and the tears of a species that refused to give up hope. Either these were the most convincing lies ever created, or humanity was nothing like the tribunal said. Kiri needed to know which one was true, so she stole a ship and fled across the quarantine line. Dr. Sora Yoon was the first human to meet her. Sora was a xenobiologist, a scientist who studied alien life. She had spent years preparing for the day when visitors might come. And now that day had finally arrived. She found Kiri standing in the docking bay, her insect eyes wide with what might have been fear or wonder, or both. "Hello," Sora said gently. "My name is Sora. Welcome to Earth." Kiri's antenna twitched. "You are smaller than I expected," Sora laughed. "We come in different sizes. Would you like something to eat? You must be tired after your journey." For 3 weeks, Sora showed Kiri everything. They walked through forests where trees reached toward the sky like green towers. They stood beside oceans where waves crashed against rocks with endless patience. They visited cities filled with millions of people, each one living their own life, pursuing their own dreams. Kiri asked thousands of questions. She wanted to understand everything. Why did humans eat dead plants and animals? Why did they cover their bodies with cloth? Why did they press their mouths together when they were happy? Every answer led to more questions, but the questions she asked most often were about humanity's past. "Your broadcast showed wars," Kiri said one evening. They were sitting in Sora's garden, watching the sun set. "Millions of your kind died fighting each other." "Yes," Sora replied. "That's true. Why did you show this? The tribunal already believes you are violent. Why give them more proof?" Sora picked up a small flower from the garden and studied it. "Because hiding the truth would be another kind of lie. We are violent sometimes. We have hurt each other badly, but we also know that this is wrong. We work every day to be better." She looked at Kiri. "The tribunal showed you our worst moments and said that's all we are. We wanted to show you our worst moments too, but also what came after. The healing, the growing, the choice to keep trying despite everything." Kiri was quiet for a long time. Her eyes reflected the orange and pink colors of the sunset. "My people have not had a war in 6,000 years, she said finally. "We believe that violence is a sign of a primitive species. This is what we were taught, and now I wonder if avoiding violence is easy when you have never been tested. Your species faced terrible challenges. You could have destroyed yourselves many times, but you didn't." Her antenna moved in a pattern that Sora had learned to recognize as respect. Perhaps that is more impressive than never facing the challenge at all. When Kiri left Earth, she returned to Vrel space with recordings, images, and a story that she broadcast on every illegal channel she could find. "The humans are not monsters," she told her people. "They are complicated, and strange and different from us. But they are kind. They welcomed me into their homes. They fed me, protected me, and answered every question I asked. Whatever the tribunal told you, go see for yourself." Her broadcast spread like fire through dry grass. The tribunal arrested her, but it was too late. Millions of Vrel had heard her words, and Kiri was not the last visitor. They came in small numbers at first. A researcher here, a curious merchant there. Each one had seen the human broadcast or heard Kiri's report, and wanted to know the truth. An Orith philosopher named Torin spent 6 months debating with human scholars. They discussed ethics, meaning, the nature of existence. At the end, Torin wrote a paper arguing that humanity's capacity for self-improvement made them one of the most remarkable species in the galaxy. A Delam musician created songs with human composers that were unlike anything heard before. The music spread through the galaxy, carrying human emotions to beings who had never seen a human face. A Kazan warrior trained with human martial artists and found them worthy opponents. He declared them honorable and brave. Words that meant everything in Kazan culture. Each visitor returned home with stories. Real stories. Personal experiences that could not be dismissed as propaganda. The tribunal tried to stop it. They increased patrols around the quarantine zone. They arrested travelers who returned from human space. They broadcast warnings about human manipulation and deception. But you cannot stop an idea whose time has come. On Vrel 4, millions of citizens gathered in the streets, demanding that their government recognize humanity. On the Orath homeworld, scholars published papers arguing against the quarantine. The Delum Trade Consortium began secretly sending goods to human colonies, and then came the moment that shook the galaxy to its core. High Counselor Marek of the Kazan was a giant, 3 meters tall, with blue skin and 4 powerful arms. He was a member of the High Tribunal itself, one of the 5 beings who ruled the Assembly. He had voted against humanity 7 years ago, but Marek was also a warrior. And warriors respected courage. He had watched the human broadcasts. He had read the reports from visitors. And he had grown ashamed of his decision. Without warning, he announced that he was resigning his position on the tribunal. More than that, he was leaving Kazan space to live on Earth. "I made a mistake," he said in his final address to the Assembly. "I judged a species by their past without considering their future. I let fear guide my decision instead of wisdom." His 4 arms spread wide, a gesture of openness. "I have seen the humans now. They are everything the tribunal fears. They are unpredictable. They are passionate. They can be dangerous. But they are also everything we have forgotten how to be. They are hopeful. They believe that tomorrow can be better than today. And they never stop trying to make it so." He looked directly at his former colleagues on the tribunal. "I was wrong to exclude them. And I will spend the rest of my life trying to make amends." He stepped down from his position and walked away. Within days, he was on a ship, heading toward Earth. The Assembly was cracking. The walls that had kept humanity isolated were beginning to fall, and somewhere on Earth, Hana Choi watched the news reports with tears streaming down her face. Her message had worked. The galaxy was finally listening, but the hardest part was still to come. By 2260, the galaxy was changing faster than anyone had expected. 12 species had formally withdrawn from the Galactic Assembly. They no longer accepted the tribunal's authority. They no longer followed its rules. Instead, they established unofficial diplomatic ties with humanity, trading goods and ideas across borders that were supposed to be closed. 20 more species remained in the Assembly but openly questioned its decisions. Their citizens traveled to human space despite the quarantine. Their merchants smuggled human art and music into foreign markets. Their scholars published papers praising human philosophy and creativity. The Assembly, which had stood for 12,000 years, was fracturing. Tribunal Prime Nevin watched this collapse with growing desperation. The silver gaseous being who had once condemned humanity now faced a crisis that threatened everything he had built. His power was crumbling. His authority was fading. Species that had obeyed the tribunal for millennia were now openly defying it. He called an emergency session of the remaining Assembly members. Thousands of representatives gathered in the Great Hall, where humanity had been rejected 7 years before. "We face an existential threat," Nivan declared. His voice no longer sounded like wind through dead leaves. Now it sounded like a storm. "The humans have poisoned our civilization with their propaganda. They have seduced weak-minded species with false promises of friendship. If we do not act now, everything we have built will be destroyed." He presented his solution: a military intervention. The Assembly would gather its fleets and blockade Earth. They would cut off all contact with the quarantine zone. They would arrest any citizen who had visited human space. They would use force to restore order. "The time for gentle measures has passed," Nivan said. "We must show the galaxy that the Assembly still has power. We must remind them what happens to those who defy us." The hall fell silent. Representatives looked at each other, uncertain. Some nodded in agreement. Others looked troubled. Then a voice spoke from the back of the chamber. "And what will that prove?" Everyone turned. The speaker was an Orath representative named Dara, an old being whose crystalline body glowed with soft purple light. She had served on the Assembly for 300 years and had rarely spoken in debates. "If we attack the humans," Dara continued, "we prove that we are afraid of them. We prove that we cannot defeat them with ideas, only with weapons. We proved that everything they said about us was true. The humans are a danger to peace, Nevin insisted. Are they? Dara's light pulsed brighter. 7 years ago, we told them they were not welcome. We locked them away and expected them to disappear. Instead, they sent a message of peace. They opened their borders. They invited us to visit them as friends. She moved forward, her crystalline form catching the light. Millions of our citizens have now met humans. They have eaten human food, heard human music, seen human art. Not one of them has been harmed. Not one of them has been mistreated. The humans welcomed them all. They are manipulating us, Nevin said. Building trust so they can strike later, or perhaps they simply want to be our friends. Dara turned to face the assembly. I have studied the reports from every visitor who returned from human space. Do you know what they all say? They say the humans are kind. They say the humans are honest. They say the humans are nothing like what we told them to expect. She paused. Either millions of our citizens from dozens of species are all wrong, or we are. I know which option I believe. The vote was held that night. For the first time in the Assembly's 12,000-year history, a tribunal proposal was rejected. The military intervention would not happen. Nevin stood alone in the empty chamber after everyone else had left. His gaseous form flickered and swirled with agitation. Everything he had worked for was falling apart. He did not understand. How had this happened? How had a primitive species, locked away and forgotten, managed to defeat the greatest civilization in the galaxy? He would never find the answer, because the answer was something his kind had forgotten long ago: hope. On the 3rd of September 2261, the Galactic Assembly formally dissolved the quarantine against humanity. But by then, it hardly mattered. The Assembly itself was transforming into something new. Working with their allies among the defecting species, Earth had helped establish a new organization, the Open Coalition. It was built on principles that the old Assembly had abandoned. Membership was voluntary. No species could be forced to join. Any species could leave at any time. All species were equal. There were no ruling councils, no tribunals, no small groups making decisions for everyone else. Every voice had equal weight. Conflicts were resolved through dialogue, not decree. Disagreements were expected and welcomed, as long as they were handled peacefully, and most importantly, no species would ever be excluded without a voice. If a new civilization was discovered, they would be welcomed with open arms and given every chance to join the galactic community. Secretary General Do-Hyun Lee, now 88 years old and frail but still sharp-minded, gave the opening address at the Coalition's founding Congress. The event was held on Earth, in a great hall built specifically for this moment. Representatives from 37 species sat together. Watching the old human speak, 7 years ago, Do-Hyun began, his voice steady despite his age. We sent a message to the galaxy. We asked for nothing but the chance to be seen, to be heard, to be judged fairly. We opened our doors and waited to see if anyone would come. He smiled, looking out at the crowded hall. You came, despite the warnings, despite the rules, despite everything you had been told. You came to see for yourselves. And what you found was not monsters, but neighbors. He paused. When the Assembly rejected us, we had choices. We could have accepted their judgment and given up on the stars. We could have built warships and tried to take by force what we could not earn through peace. Many among us argued for both paths. His eyes found Tae-ho Kim in the front row. The former director nodded slightly. Instead, we chose a third way. We told the truth. We showed the galaxy who we really are, the good and the bad, the beautiful and the ugly. We trusted that if beings from across the stars could see us clearly, they would judge us fairly. He straightened slightly, drawing on reserves of strength that his body barely had left. Let this be the foundation of our new coalition. Let us build something based on honesty, not fear. Openness, not exclusion. Trust, not suspicion. Let every species, no matter how young or strange or different, have a place at our table. Hana Choi sat in the third row, tears streaming down her face. Beside her was Sun Woo, who held her hand tightly. Behind them sat Yuna and Minho, both showing signs of age but both looking happier than they had in years. High Counselor Merrick, the Kazan who had given up everything to live among humans, stood in the back of the hall. His blue face showed an expression that human observers had learned to recognize as pride. Even Kiri was there, the Vrel journalist who had been the first to answer humanity's call. She had been released from prison when the quarantine fell, and she had traveled to Earth immediately to witness this moment. When we were cast out, Do-hyun continued, we built a home for everyone. That is humanity's legacy. And now, that home belongs to all of you. The hall erupted in applause. Beings from dozens of worlds rose to their feet, clapping, cheering, making sounds of approval in ways that humans could not always understand but could always feel. In the front row, Tae-ho Kim looked at his old colleagues. They had been young when this journey began. They had carried the burden of rejection across the years. And now they were watching something new being born. We did it, Yuna said softly. Tae-ho shook his head. No, everyone did it together. Every person who kept hoping when hope seemed foolish. Every visitor who came to see the truth. Every being who chose trust over fear. Minho smiled. That sounds like something a diplomat would say. Maybe I finally learned something after all these years. On the stage, Do-hyun finished his speech and stepped back from the podium. The applause continued for a long time. Outside the hall, the sun was setting over Earth. Orange and pink light painted the sky. The same colors that had once welcomed Kiri on her first visit. Ships from distant worlds moved through the atmosphere, coming and going freely. No longer afraid. The stars were no longer cold and distant. They were filled with friends. Humanity had been excluded, rejected, cast out of the galactic community before they even had a chance to prove themselves. They could have responded with anger or despair. Instead, they chose hope, and hope, as it turned out, was the most powerful force in the universe. The story of humanity's rejection was over. The story of humanity's place in the stars was just beginning, and somewhere, in a small office in Seoul where it had all started, a young communications officer was already working on the next broadcast. There were more stories to tell, more connections to make, more bridges to build. The galaxy was listening now, and humanity had so much more to say.